everybody. Welcome to the Information War Report for April 2025. I am Brian, and here is also my co-founder of the Media and Democracy Project, Milo. Milo, welcome.
Great to be here, Brian.
It is great to be with you in these dire times to spend time in community with other people. We hope you are doing that out there where you are, but we are going to get right into it today. Up on the screen is how we usually like to start, letting people know that the Media and Democracy Project supports local and nonprofit journalism, advances media literacy, and engages in media criticism, and achieves legislative and regulatory solutions to support a better fact-based media in the public interest. That is our raison d'etre. So we also like to always have this slide, the very prescient slide. This is in 2024, the gulf was informed voters versus uninformed voters. If you knew more facts about the world, you were more likely to vote for Kamala Harris. If you knew less facts about the world, or the less news that you consulted, the more likely you were to vote for Donald Trump. So that's just to remind everybody that information is everything. It becomes our outcomes. So here we have another political cartoon, because we love political cartoons here at the Media and Democracy Project. And this one is about First Amendment betrayals in U.S. history. This is from Ann Telnay. So here we've got the Sedition Act of 1918, Japanese American internment during the Second World War, and McCarthyism. And so this next First Amendment betrayal in U.S. history is what we have been seeing with more than just Mahmoud Khalil, but obviously Mahmoud Khalil was the big kickoff to this infringement upon free speech rights. You also then had the Tufts University graduate student who simply was on a byline in an opinion piece in the Tufts newspaper, and then she was rounded up for that.
The founders emphasized in the American independence the importance of a First Amendment, which was the right to free speech, to free assembly, and a free press. And we're seeing simultaneously that critical pillar of American democracy literally attacked every step of the way. The right to free assembly, threats to impact people protesting or demonstrating their First Amendment rights in the streets, to say what you feel without threats of imprisonment or being taken away by secret police, and then the large-scale assaults on our free press, both from governmental pressures such as the FCC and Brendan Carr, all the way down to just literally the President of the United States threatening and calling out individual journalists and calling them threats and enemy of the people. So the First Amendment is central to American values and its existence, and Telnay captures so much of it and so effectively in this political cartoon.
Let's move on to actions for April. We have this quote that we've used in the past with Walter Cronkite talking about press freedom, its importance to democracy, and it is especially a good segue this month as we talk about Press Freedom United and sign-on letters.
We are an activist community. We met this last Monday. We had 100 people on the Zoom discussing how we can mobilize as individuals and as communities in support of the First Amendment. And we have joined with coalitions of groups that are very interested in press freedom and efforts to protect journalists. And one of the sign-on letters that we've done and engaged with is from the Press Freedom United. You have until April 30th. You can sign on both as an individual and or a civic organization. And this is a growing list of civic orgs and individuals who are specifically interested in the following: to restore press access immediately. We're talking about the White House and coverage of our federal government, to protect public media, to reinstate funding for the Voice of America, respect and honor journalistic integrity, and lead on global press freedom.
This is an exciting one. So the Media and Democracy Project has endeavored to create a media writers workshop.
The idea with the Media and Democracy Project is we want to meet people where they are and also help them move along their level of engagement in media actions and activism. And so it's a training session for members by members, doing things like beginning to feel comfortable writing a letter to the editor, the form and function and strategies there, what makes a successful letter to the editor. And also one of my personal favorites is develop some comfort reaching out to journalists and either thanking them for doing excellent work because they are our heroes, but also not being afraid to reach out and criticize them and cajole them to do better if you notice something specific. So this is helping you build your muscles so you can flex your media activism self.
First, this meeting on May 8th, and so that link right there, tiny.cc mad hyphen MMWW. And I believe you do have to use all caps, so be mindful of that. Okay, great. Be an activist consumer of news. Language or frames that should trigger you to take action. We have two of them up here on the screen. We've been talking for a while about how we shouldn't even be calling it Doge. We should call it Dodgy or something else, because the acronym is both silly, but it also does not really refer to or have anything to do with what government efficiency would look like as it was being practiced before the government efficiency experts, the inspectors general, were all, summarily fired. And then we also have deportation up there. One word that I've been using also is like rendition, right? Like rendering people, because it is not necessarily even deportation, because they're not going to their home country in many cases. Many Venezuelans, 5% of whom have no criminal record, are being put into this CSOT facility in El Salvador, in a foreign nation, not even their home country.
What we ask people to do is be an engaged consumer of news. There is no such thing as this government agency. Unfortunately, major news organizations have accepted the disinformation frame of this being some credible organization. It is really employees of Elon Musk that have been acting on his behalf and basically dismantling our federal government. Many of the things they're doing are clearly illegal, accessing records they have no right to access, and right now they're running amok and creating havoc and destroying our institutions. So use the frame just because it was the initial title given by Elon Musk to his band of merry cyber thieves is something we reject. So we want people to engage. If you read a piece and somebody's still referring to this as dodgy and has anything to do with efficiency or government spending, you got to reach out to that journalist. And there's a part B of this one, Brian. There's a second wave that's going to make me pull what hair I have left out of my head, which is now Elon Musk says he might be stepping back from his role in the federal government. All of the people that are instilled in this entity that is at present destroying our federal government from within are employees or are affiliated with Elon Musk. They'll still be accountable to him. That news organizations are now saying that he may step back is something that we should really reject on its face. It doesn't make the harms any less real or the pathology of what they're doing to our nation and society any less tangible.
When you see these things, that is a cue for you to engage, to be a member of society who cares about our outcomes, cares about the fourth estate, cares about journalism and how it communicates information to the public, because that is what we end up making our decisions upon, is the information that journalism gives us. And so if it is treating these things as legitimate, we want you to let those editors and those journalists know politely but firmly. Moving on, another action is to attend this event that we are having, the Power of Editorial Cartoonists for Democracy. This is with Ann Telnays.
She was our hero for the Media Democracy Project in January of this year when she made her bold statement of why she was leaving the Washington Post, made it very clear that threats to press freedom are not just from the government, but also from the economic forces. She's really a superstar in the space. And this is a moment made for political cartoonists, and especially Ann Telnays. And May 29th, lock it in, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to ask for help in what she thinks we ought to be doing as consumers and citizens.
And she also is really great at matching scarves to her hair based on this photo. So let's get right into the Information War Report for April 2025. Everything is about information, our outcomes, the society we have now. How did we arrive at fascism in America? It's because we have allowed an information ecosystem to be built that does not operate in the public interest in the way that we would want it to serve democracy. So that's why we're here. That's why you're here watching, and we're so grateful for you to be watching. Mad Big Journalism March 2025 report cards. There are a lot of words on this slide, Milo. Bring me through it.
The whole concept is news organizations have a responsibility to communicate effectively and consistently what's going on in the world. American democracy is literally on the brink. If you read a newspaper, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal, and that is your only source of news, you would have no idea that literally historians are telling people who are listening that American democracy is already on the course for authoritarianism, maybe competitive authoritarianism. This is not American democracy as the founders envisioned. If we evaluate globally for the month of March what the major three newspaper organizations have done in terms of their coverage, calling about the actual explicit assaults on democracy, not just a story that Donald Trump did X or this Roberts Court did why, but literally democracy itself, a status update. What are the vital signs of democracy? If you ask people, they have no idea, especially if their news sources are limited to these three organizations, the crisis America is in. The rising of fascism, literally people paying attention. You can hear the threats of late 1930s Germany here in terms of assaults on civic institutions, etc. Resegregation, something that is not talked about in these news organizations that cater, frankly, to mostly white consumers, is the concept that many of the consequences of what is being done at the federal level are in effect resegregating American society. So that's not something that's discussed in these elite institutions, but we think should be part of the conversation and be important to communicate across America. How do news organizations discuss threats to democracy, what the implications are, with the frequency, with the stridency, and not just say, oh, we wrote this really important piece once in the last month about some impact on American democracy. If you believe that American democracy is important, it should be a primary subject matter and covered with the consistency and priority that it deserves, not as an afterthought if you scroll through the paper. And also what is and isn't being covered is the pro-democracy movement itself. There are literally millions of people now who recognize that American democracy itself is under threat, and we need to mobilize as patriotic Americans and to fight back against the authoritarian tide. So, in the last month of March, if you put that all together, how effectively was any of that communicated to consumers of the New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal? We'd go with Salzberger's New York Times, a D-. Some important stories here and there, but definitely not prioritizing democracy itself. Bezos's Washington Post, a couple important stories, but not prioritizing the threats and attacks on democracy itself. And Murdoch's Wall Street Journal, similarly, one-off stories, very important, but cumulatively not meeting the moment, sounding the alarm of the status and the threats to American democracy.
That's why we're in this moment, because of that lack of enduring, sustained coverage with prominence and frequency of this coordinated strategic assault on democracy. The word that leaps out to me the most is Christian nationalism, and the frame that this deletion of our government really is the goal of a small minority of extremely wealthy people to end American democracy and create a theocracy. That is a real thing. It's plain as day to us. It's well researched, lots of scholarship, lots of academic work on it. Many people are aware of it, especially the people who are perpetrating it. But most Americans do not know that Donald Trump's previous administration and this one are rife with members of something called the Council for National Policy, who are the people who want to set up a theocracy in this country. And so, yes, like D's across the board.
Brian, I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know if you've heard about a document called Project 2025 yet.
But yes, Russ Vogt is a member. His wife is heavily involved in the Council for National Policy.
So imagine if the New York Times ran a subsection on democracy itself. That would be my fantasy. If I could get Arthur Sulzberger in a room and be like, listen, you got a sports section, you got a Tuesday science section, you got business section. How are you not running this like as a, throw another section in there until the crisis is over and the historians are not moving to other countries? How about you have a section on democracy and itself? Make it a thing that you actually cover, something tangible, valuable, prioritize it. But listen, we'll keep trying.
Turn it into a game. People go nuts. They'll do it right after Wordle. Okay, let's move on. We're going to go into the coverage of one of the larger days of protest in recent history. Do you know what the numbers were for April 5th, Milo?
I think it's fair to say it was between 1 and 3 million. It's more than a million
Incredible.
people got to the streets on April the 5th this year, all across the nation, 1,400 plus protests. And this is just a nice visual that Brian and I were just talking about, like how do news orgs prioritize things? 1 million plus Americans took to the streets to oppose threats to American democracy. And this was not a sufficiently covered story and received lip service on both of the two major news organizations the next day.
We've got the bottom of the Washington Post. It just refers you to another part of it. And we've got a tiny little picture there with, I guess, paleontology or whatever that is way more important at the top on the New York Times. You know, this downplaying is out of control. Let's move on to the next. Pro-democracy movement coverage on April 20th, which was the day after the April 19th protest. So the New York Times had 0 on their front page. And again, the Washington Post said we will put a little blurb. This is a window into how the consent is manufactured, right? Into how people are pacified and not made aware that they should care about something. These are still the major drivers of coverage, of discourse in this country, and it is shocking to see.
It's emphasizing that democracy itself is not a priority by not covering the pro-democracy movement, is treating these as one-offs or marginal. What we're talking about now is the movement of American democracy itself. So this movement is a very important movement.
Okay, Mad Heroes and Zeros for the month of April. We are quite saddened by the passing of Bob McChesney. Bob McChesney was an amazing scholar and also an activist for media reform, writing, I don't know, it feels like 20 books about, our media ecosystem, reforms to our media ecosystem, problems with it over multiple decades. He passed away at the end of March.
He is one of the guiding heroes of the Media and Democracy Project. We might have to create a new term. He's really a superhero. I mean, he supported us. He came twice to speak with us. He signed on to our pro-democracy guidelines. He was generous with his time, his brilliance. He was, always easy to get in touch with, and was just really such a generous and kind human. And he did it because he wanted a true we the people, all the people democracy, and he recognized that media was central to that. And without media reform, we were never going to have America that lived up to its ideals that the founders set out at the onset. So we're just grateful for the time we've had with Bob, but also his legacy lives on, and we're proud to carry at least maybe not the torch, given how incredibly powerful and insight, but we're carrying the matchstick of Bob McChesney with us in our work here in the Media and Democracy Project.
Let's go on, unfortunately, to Mad Zeros. Brendan Carr may not be a household face to everyone else, but it certainly is to Milo and I and us at Mad. But so here he is, giving the thumbs up, and he is wearing a lapel pin. And what is that lapel pin of? It is of Dear Leader Donald Trump's. Nominally, the FCC commissioners are supposed to be impartial arbiters of, all matters that come before them. But that is definitely not the case with Brendan Carr, and he is getting hyped by Tenet Media propagandist Benny Johnson over there. And yeah, this is just so uncool.
No words. Can't make this up. Next.
Yeah, it's really just the most extreme people in our society are like waltzing through the halls of our government with smiles and Dear Leader lapel pins. Okay. So, does NPR ignore or underplay the mass protest is a question that was submitted to the NPR public editor, and we are looking at the response right here. She says, I was in New York City over the weekend. This is specific to April 5th, which was 1 to 3 million people taking to the streets across the country. There was a massive outpouring of people, and this person is saying, knowing that I already had 2 letters about the lack of NPR's coverage of protests in my inbox and that more would likely be coming, I went to watch the demonstration in Manhattan so I could judge the newsworthiness myself as a news event. It wasn't very compelling. So mass protest, not compelling to NPR. Why would anyone who is a journalist say that mass protest is not compelling as a news event?
I got nothing. We appreciate that the NPR does have a public editor, but this one we think missed the moment. And frankly, it looks like they're not either recognizing the hazards of and threats of the moment, or they're somewhat indifferent. And that's one of the challenges. A lot of folks in these institutions we would classify as somewhat elitist, and they're not really worried about getting abducted and sent to CCOT tomorrow. And so I think it does that has to at some point start to become part of the conversation. Is that influencing people's coverage? And then
pro-democracy movement coverage for April, we're going to give some grades here. So the New York Times gets an F, 0, A1, and they put something on A28. A, they put on April 20th, the day after the April 19th protest, they had a prominent middle of the page. These are all their home pages online.
These are all online, exactly right.
And then this is a B- for the Washington Post. they had the story, but they messed up. They forgot not that it's supposed to go at the top, like the AP did. They just put it at the bottom. So they had it there, but it was a little less prominently covered. Although props to that giant upside down American flag.
And they lose. The reason they got demerits is when they went to the print edition, which the AP does not have, but when the Washington Post went to their print edition, they really had nothing on the front page. So
Got it.
that was a very transient positive from the Washington.
Let's move on to the language of our times, to how we spoke earlier about how folks should be aware of Doge and deportation and write to people in the journalism industry when they don't describe what's happening with all of the context that the moment requires. So we want people to be paying attention to the language, the word choices, the way that language is used to soften or harden different events according to the narrative or the agenda of the, business elite, the wealthy owners of our publications and our media. So we want people to be paying attention to that at all times. So for April 21st, which was the meeting 2 days ago, deportation, concentration camp, fascism, and tariffs. It almost feels like, Milo, that we talked about fascism for a long time. Then all the fascism happened and we kind of stopped talking about. It's like, yeah, well, now this is it. This is actually it. I almost feel like we're not talking about it as much. It's now actually the fascism, right? Like the Constitution is being ignored. People are being slandered, and those slanders are leading them to be put into a foreign prison, potentially for life. Like we're sending people to a foreign country in a prison for having committed no crime that would put them in a prison in a foreign country.
Brian, exactly. This is how we in the Media Democracy Project do our best to keep hold of reality, is focusing on the words that are being used and chosen and do our best to fight upstream against them, but also kind of use it as an opportunity to kind of commune around these things. So deportation, we talked about that earlier. We've actually asked our community, and including you listeners, the word deportation no longer is sufficient to describe what's happening to people without due process being sent on planes outside of the United States. Another one, a concentration camp. Maybe you as a listener don't think of CCOT just yet as a concentration camp, because we all have our conceived notions of historically what that means for folks. But we're actually having a conversation about concentration camps in 2025. And is this or is this not? That's insane. That is disturbing. That's why this word concentration camp should be here. Not just is it being used or isn't it being used accurately. It's that it's even part of the conversation, should scare and mobilize everyone. Multiple historians are making it very clear.
Okay, so also some more language of our times. Deportation, due process, exile. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was abducted without due process. He was not deported. He was rendered to a labor camp. It is unconstitutional to exile Americans. I believe that we're referencing the Bukele Oval Office meeting where they said that homegrowns were next. And I think that the warning to people is, hey, MAGA friends, loved ones, neighbors, independents who are maybe not shocked or scared or terrified. Remember when they said that the only people that they were going to deport were the violent criminals? And now 75% of the Venezuelans that they deported in March had no criminal record other than, being here seeking asylum, right? So when they say that the homegrowns that they're going to send to foreign prisons totally illegally are just going to be the worst of the worst, well, guess what? They've already crossed that line with what they said with regards to undocumented immigrants in this country.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think the language of this is very important. It's already an affront to American values to take people who are here either lawfully or unlawfully without due process is a threat to all Americans. That press hasn't communicated that is a major failure in this specific subject matter. But this concept that there's even considering the concept of sending Americans outside of the United States, and press should be absolutely opposed to even using the frame of calling that deportation. The term is exile, and there's no constitutional way to do that. So if we lived in a same time, that would be an affront to the Constitution, and you would hear calls for impeachment.
What distinguishes a concentration camp from a prison in the modern sense is that it functions outside of a judicial system. The prisoners are not indicted or convicted of any crime by judicial process. That's a good capper on what you just said.
And that's from the Holocaust Encyclopedia. And those of you historians who want to have beef with that as a definition, fine. But once again, I will still insist that we're having a quibble over the definition of concentration camp is itself that should be the subject.
Historians quibbling over exact definition of concentration camp, sign of healthy society.
Because, good public debate. Is it or isn't it? I don't know. Let's focus on the debate, not the actual.
Yeah, it's totally a sign of a healthy society.
And don't forget, something that wasn't covered. It did make the front page of the New York Times about 4 weeks ago. Donald Trump has asked for $45 billion to build camps to house people that he plans on deporting / abducting and sending abroad. $45 billion with a capital B. What was interesting is the way that was framed at the front page of the New York Times was actually Donald Trump requests 6 times normal amount of funds without the actual dollar amount. I would have started with the headline. $45 billion? That's like more than the whole NIH budget was while we had an NIH. Next subject.
Next subject.
Sorry.
That's fine. Our favorite game. We love to play it. You love to play it at home. It's why you wait with bated breath for each iteration of the Mad Information War Report to come out each month. It should be front page, but isn't April 2025 edition. So here we go. We, in our meetings every month, one great reason to come, besides all the other great reasons, is that we play this game live with our members. And here are this month's contestants. We are all afraid. Speaking to Alaska nonprofit leaders, Murkowski gets candid on upheaval in federal government. There has been this reportage over the last year or so where you learn that the cowardice of the Republican Congress members is that they feel threatened and scared. Well, guess what? Welcome to America, where so many vulnerable people and non-vulnerable people are also very scared. So welcome to the club, Republican Congress people. B, Trump media wants the SEC to investigate a hedge fund that has $105 million short on the company, which I think sounds like a good bet. Trump official scrutinizes New York's attorney general over real estate. So this is Trump using the power of the government to do corrupt things in his own self-interest. C, I believe this is a reference to the next iteration of Signalgate, which is how Pete Hegseth, at the same time that Signalgate happened, he also was texting his brother and his wife?
Yes.
His brother and his wife, those things. D, White House says gold reserves may be used to purchase Bitcoin. So something with value used to purchase something with no value other than the speculation of wealthy people. Wild. And then E, I'm just going to call out the... It may be hard for people to read this one, but in fact, in the minutes after Dodgy accessed the NLRB system, someone with an IP address in Russia was able to try to log in. That is a very, very alarming. Who's communicating with who? It's very suspicious. It should be investigated more by our journalists.
Brian, this is insane. That Musk's cyber thieves have been accessing firewall databases, one after another, clicking through, knocking down barriers and accessing data. Now they're in the IRS. They've been in all these important government databases. This is just one database, the NLRB. This is like union stuff, company stuff, people file workman's comp stuff. I think this kind of stuff. This isn't like super high level stuff. But it's important to, especially to American, governments and commerce. But this isn't like the biggest, most important stuff. But these same people who did this logged in LRB databases, and within minutes, the same password and usernames were being used with an IP address in Russia. The same passwords and usernames. This is insane. Okay, sorry, I just had to. And so the problem with this is not only is this a story, but these people have accessed all these other databases. Are there any databases left that have not been compromised by Elon Musk cyber thieves? That's the big piece here.
Absolutely. I do also believe that there's internal information about companies that they would not want the public or some malactor in a foreign country to see as well. So,
totally.
Yes, I mean, this just out of control. So you can come to the meetings, you can play that game. It's an incredible game. It's the best game you've ever played. Maybe the New York Times could start turning it into a game on their app. Should be front page, but isn't. Let's bring it home to Chuckle the month. I just saw like a video of this. I don't even know what team this is. Is this a college team?
I forget which team won the college football championship. They went to the White House and there's a trophy and they had it on the podium and they were like, hoist it with the Vice President of the United States. in classic J.D. Vance form. He actually like broke the actual award itself. This would have been a great montage. I think Getty got all these photos, but I know I didn't see this, but I did get a chuckle when I saw it on Blue Sky.
Well, what we learned from this is that JD Vance's touch is toxic. So toxic it will break trophies, so toxic it will also lead to the Pope to say, "That's enough. I'm out. I can't wait to get to heaven. Enough of this guy." So, yeah, that is the Chuckle O' the Month. I like this new segment, Chuckle O' the Month, brought to you by the Media and Democracy Project. So here we go. We were so excited to screen Stripped for Parts, the crisis in American journalism, about the hedge funds that are buying up newsrooms across the country. They have been doing it for several years now and stripping them for parts, selling them off, reducing the employees there, making the journalism more hollow, spending less on the journalism. We are getting less quality of journalism. So we just wanted to celebrate that, we're putting on these events. Lots of people are coming. People are starting, they have to, I guess, be energized about the threats and finding things to do, looking for ways to understand the world and comprehend the moment we are in, and also starting to realize, as we have for years here, and no shame, we're welcoming you no matter when you arrive to the understanding that information is everything. Our information ecosystem and its health becomes our outcomes one way or the other. Good outcomes if it's really healthy, bad outcomes if it is not. Well, it's not very healthy. And so that is what we are talking about and fighting for every single day. Milo, it has been an absolute pleasure to once again do the Media and Democracy Project's Information War Report with you for the month of April. We love to end with this postage stamp from, seems like 1947, the 100-year anniversary of Joseph Pulitzer's birth. Our republic and its press will rise or fall together. So there's no better distillation of what we're all about and what democracy is all about. So we want everybody out there to care about these issues, to tell other people to care about these issues. We have the situation we do in our country because of the toxicity of our information ecosystem. So if you care about democracy and you're looking for something to do, you can do so much worse than coming to a Media and Democracy Project meeting once a month to engage with us online, to engage with our Blue Sky account, to engage with our local journalism directory, which you can find on our website. We are so grateful for your time and attention, and we will see you next month.
Brian, always a pleasure. It is an honor and a pleasure to be in the trenches of the information war with you. And folks, you have choices, and feed your brain healthy, good information. And we need to do our best to match our media diet to our values, and especially when one of those main values is advocacy for an all-inclusive aspirational democracy.
Well said. See you next time.